BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series. Our daily look at an area football team and the key questions we'll be answering about that team and our August 21st preseason preview here at Big Country Preps. I'm with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we are talking about the Brock Eagles.
The Class 4A Division II Brock Eagles. The Eagles are making the move up to 4A this year, and that's going to be a really fun transition. They've obviously had just an enormous amount of success at the 3A D1 level, and it's going to be fun to see how that transfers over to a larger classification. But one of the interesting things about this Brock squad this year is they do have they went through some fairly significant graduation losses. They had lost 22 of their 36 lettermen to graduation, return only 14 this year, and among those, just 4 offensive and 2 defensive starters. So this will be something of a reload season for the Eagles, but they do have call-ups from a 9-1 junior varsity team, so a lot of talent coming up the pipeline, as you'd expect in that program. But going to be fun to see what kind of season Brock has, and kind of how that move up to Class 4A goes for them.
All right. And with that, we want to remind you, YouTubers, to please hit the subscribe button and then also hit that little bell so you'll get notifications each and every time that Big Country Preps comes up with a new video. Also, we'd like to thank a couple of our sponsors, beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Brackenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, give Rob a shot at 254-559-2266. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. That is Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Let's talk about the Brock Eagles and some of the biggest questions they face here in the 2024 season. And the first one, I think, is just moving up a classification, moving into a new environment with new opponents, new rivals, all sorts of those things. They've obviously, like I said, had a ton of success at the Class 3A level, had developed some pretty good rivalries with those teams that they had been in the district with the last several years, and some pretty good playoff rivalries with teams that they had met frequently in the postseason. They're going to lose a lot of that, and it's going to be a whole lot of new opponents on their schedule now. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing as they move to District 3, 4A, D2, where you've got some programs that have had a lot of success. You talk about Graham. Graham's a program that's had a ton of success. I mean, you're talking about jumping into a district with some programs that have been pretty solid, obviously, at that level. I'm just interested to see how this transition goes, and if it goes as seamlessly as I think it might. I expect Brock to be very competitive, and I'm excited to see what they can do this year.
I mean, the region that they're in got tougher too. And that's the big thing. I mean, this is a team that's used to making deep playoff runs, and their region just got a lot tougher with teams like Glen Rose and Graham in there. Lubbock Estacado now is in there. Monahans that they're going to have to face. It's going to be a step up, a challenge, but I think they'll meet it over the long haul. Maybe not this year, but over the long haul, I think they will. My question, if they want to make an immediate impact, if Brock wants to make an immediate splash in Class 4A, they're going to need help this year from that 9-1 JV team. So it just really, how big of a contribution will those kids be able to make in their first varsity season? Your first varsity season, you tend to make some mistakes. It's only natural. So if they can limit their mistakes from that group and get a solid contribution, who knows? We might see a bit of a surprise from this young Brock team, and they are young.
Yeah. And one thing that will help is you've got all those JV kids that stood on the sidelines for 5 playoff games last year. So those guys have been around it at least and seen kind of that varsity speed. But you are right. I mean, they've only got 14 lettermen returning. They're going to need those guys to step in. Those players are a lot of them are going to have to start, and the others are going to have to fill in as depth. So that will be a big question for them. The last question I have is just about offensive skill talent, skill weapons, really. Brock is blessed in the fact that it returns a really established and accomplished quarterback in Brody Woods, a kid who, as a junior last year, passed for over 2,400 yards, ran for over 1,100, was just a really big-time playmaker for him last year. That's a good place to start offensively. Obviously, obviously. However, at the other positions, they're going to have some kids step up and establish themselves as, go-to playmakers. They've got a couple of kids who had some success for them. Colt Matlock obviously caught some passes for him in the passing game. Toller Kearley's a kid who got some playing time at the running back position. But they're going to have to find some guys to really be those go-to guys that really are going to have to step into larger roles than maybe what they've assumed in the past. How's that going to play out? I think that's going to be a big part of the success that Brock has this year.
All right, and with that, we're going to take a quick look at Brock's schedule for 2024. And as you may expect, it's a difficult one since Brock is constantly successful, and a lot of people don't want to play him. So it's that non-district portion, even for this young Brock team, is going to be a challenge. They will open at Decatur on August the 30th, followed by another road trip to Lake Worth on September 6th. Their home opener will be against Aubrey. That's going to be September the 13th. A week later, they will play host to Fort Worth Southwest. And then on the 27th, in their final non-district game, they'll be playing Eastlake, California. And that's going to be September 27th, just before an open date.
Yeah, fun, tough non-district schedule there sets them up for district play, which will open on October 11th with a home game against Saginaw Eagle Mountain, a first-year program. A program that will be sans seniors this year, so that could be a challenge for them. They follow that with a road trip to Mineral Wells on October 18th before hosting Burke Burnett on October 25th. They then travel to Graham on November 1st for what will be a big road game before finishing up their regular season at home against Bridgeport on the 8th of November.
All right, game of the year for Brock. In other words, the most important game for them to win, either to get into the playoffs or to get a higher seed. How do you see it?
To me, I think it's that November 1st game at Graham. I think this Brock team has an opportunity to compete for a district championship this year in this district. Obviously, some challenges there early in the district schedule, but I think that game at Graham is going to be their biggest challenge of the district season. I think that's going to be a really fun game. I think that could be a very exciting matchup and one that could well decide the district championship.
Yes, and I agree with that, and I think, but because of the difficulty of that early season schedule with a young team, Brock might come in there with a few losses, and some people might be thinking, they're down this year. I wouldn't count on that by that point in the season, early November. That at that game at Graham, people are already talking about it. That's going to be a big one. It's one that we've got circled on our calendar already.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are some other games. I do think there are potential challenges on the district just because you're facing some schools that numbers wise are playing at a higher level than what you have been in district. But I think that Graham one is the one that, like you said, everyone's going to be circling on the calendar. And if Brock does get to that point, undefeated in district, which is a very a possibility, that's going to be a massive game with a massive atmosphere.
All right, and with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, the Brock Eagles. But before we do that, we want to remind you, August 21st is the big day here at Big Country Preps. That's the day we release our annual preseason football preview. Tons of stats, standings, feature stories for every 11-man football team we cover, previews for all of our 11-man teams, lots of photos, lots of videos, predictions, opinion pieces, you name it. We're going to have it. It is a bunch of stuff. Don't forget to join us for the fun on August 21st.
And this year, our preview grows as we are adding 5 new schools to the coverage area. Included among those are 2 of Brock's district mates, Graham and Mineral Wells, as well as Glenrose, Toller, and Miles. So we are super excited to be adding those 5 schools to our coverage area. We hope y'all are excited to follow our coverage of those schools throughout the school year. In the meantime, thank you for joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two-A-Days series, and make sure you come back tomorrow when we discuss the Graham Steers here at BigCountryPreps.com.